My name is Mira Reed. I'm 33, and I built a $10 million craft beer restaurant empire from nothing in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Last week, my parents threw their 30th wedding anniversary celebration at my flagship location, Harbor Brew, without knowing I own the place. The room was packed with their friends, local business owners, craft beer club members. My mom took the mic first. She toasted our real family. Eyes locked on my brother Alex, then turned to me and said loud enough for the whole room, "You're not family." The glass in my hand stopped halfway to my lips. My dad stared at the floor. Alex smirked. I set the glass down, walked to the stage, and grabbed the mic. "Thank you all for celebrating at Harbor Brew," I said. "My 10 locations. My company." The room went dead silent. If you've ever been erased by the people who raised you, comment where you're watching from and subscribe, because this is how I turned their rejection into everything they now stand in. I was 9 when the favoritism became impossible to ignore. Alex Reed. My brother was 4 starting preschool, and Mom Irene Reed spent every morning driving him there, waiting at the gate to praise his finger paintings. I walked the 3 blocks home from elementary school alone, backpack heavy, and when I asked how my day went, she'd glance up from packing his lunch and say, "Fine, I guess." My 13th birthday fell on a Saturday. I'd saved allowance for weeks to buy ingredients for homemade pizza, invited 5 friends from class, even printed invitations on the school computer. But the week before Alex 8 came down with a mild fever, Mom canceled everything. "He needs quiet," she said, closing my bedroom door so the phone wouldn't ring. I sat on the floor staring at the invitations I'd hidden under my mattress. 3 months later, Alex was fully recovered, and Mom threw him a party at the local park, 3-tier cake, a new bike, 20 kids from his soccer team. I was allowed to come, but told to help clean up tables, not join the games. Mom introduced guests the same way every time. She'd pull Alex forward first. "This is our son Alex, top of his class." Then, as an afterthought, she'd nod toward me and Mira. No daughter, no explanation, like I was the neighbor's kid tagging along. Dad Alan Reed was always at the office or on site for his furniture manufacturing business. He came home late, exhausted, and let Mom handle the house. If he heard her brag about Alex's goals in Pee-wee soccer, he'd nod and ask for details about the coach. I learned to cook from local TV segments on public access. While Mom grilled steak and mashed potatoes for Alex, I experimented with pasta and garden tomatoes in the old pot no one used. At dinner, his plate overflowed. Mine got the leftover greens or a cold sandwich. Mom came home from the mall excited about new cleats for Alex, perfect for practice, then handed me a pair of hand-me-down sneakers 2 sizes too big. "You'll grow into them." Family photos on the mantel told the story without words. Mom held Alex in the center, Dad's arm loosely around my shoulder like an obligation. In some shots, she positioned him front and center, nudging me to the edge until I stopped smiling for the camera altogether. School was my escape. I brought home straight-A report cards in science, hoping for praise. Mom skimmed them. "Good, Mira," but Alex just made the travel soccer team. Dad sometimes asked about my day over rare early dinners, but the conversation always shifted to Alex's training schedule. I poured myself into projects, local business presentations, essay contests, things Mom dismissed as hobbies compared to Alex's athletic future. Mom never hid her bias. If Alex cried over a lost toy, she replaced it immediately. When I scraped my knee falling off my bike, she told me to clean it myself. "You're old enough." Summers, she enrolled Alex in elite soccer camps by the lake. I stayed home brewing simple beer yeast from library books, selling small jars to neighbors for pocket change. Dad brought home wood samples from work, asking Alex which color he liked for a new line, never consulting me on flavor ideas. I kept a secret notebook under my mattress, jotting recipes, dreaming of a place that was mine. By the time I was 15 and Alex 10, the gap was undeniable. Mom planned a blowout party for his 10th professional coach demo, expensive gear. My birthday was a quick dinner at home. I started weekend shifts at a downtown coffee shop, learning to pull espresso, manage the register, save every tip. Mom noticed but said it was good responsibility training, unlike Alex, who needed to focus on sports. Dad got promoted. We moved to a bigger house in the suburbs. My room was still the smallest. Senior year I was 17, and Alex 12, when I poured everything into a catering project for the local craft beer festival. I spent weeks researching farm-to-table pairings, contacting small Michigan farms for fresh hops and heirloom vegetables, testing recipes on the coffee shop's closing shift after the last customer left. I saved every file on my beat-up laptop, the only one I owned after years of saving tips from double shifts and skipped lunches. The proposal included cost breakdowns, sample menus with beer pairings, even a timeline for setup at the downtown pavilion. One evening, I stepped into the shower after wiping down counters, leaving the laptop on the kitchen table next to my notes. When I came out towel-wrapped and exhausted, Mom had accidentally knocked over her full mug of coffee right onto the keyboard. Liquid seeped into the vents. The screen flickered, then died. All my spreadsheets, supplier contacts, menu drafts, the festival map I'd annotated, gone in seconds. She stood at the sink, rinsing her cup. "You backed it up, right? These things happen." I didn't sleep that night or the next. I biked to the public library at dawn. Both days used their ancient desktops to reconstruct everything from memory handwritten scraps and quick calls to vendors I'd memorized. I rewrote the budget line by line, redesigned the menu with new sketches, even drove to the festival grounds to remeasure booth space. I submitted the revised proposal just before the midnight deadline, and against all odds won the contract, $150 from a local furniture showroom owner who needed appetizers for his craft beer tie-in booth. It was my first paid gig, proof I could turn ideas into money, and the check felt heavier than any report card. I confronted Mom that night in the living room, the ruined laptop on the coffee table between us like evidence in court. "You did this on purpose?" I said, voice steady despite the shake in my hands. She crossed her arms, eyes cold. "You're not that important, Mira. Accidents happen when people leave things everywhere." Dad walked in midway, still in his work boots, tried to mediate with a tired, "Let's all calm down and talk this through," but never once told her she was wrong or asked why the coffee was near my work. His silence sealed it louder than any argument. I packed that weekend in quiet fury. Clothes, folded tight notebooks with future business ideas, the few cooking tools I'd bought myself at thrift stores, all into a single duffel bag that barely zipped. I called Aunt Jane Sullivan, Mom's sister, who'd divorced years earlier and lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of Grand Rapids near the lake trails. "Come whenever you're ready," she said, without hesitation, voice warm through the phone static. I arrived at dusk on the city bus. She cleared space in her guest room, formerly a storage closet filled with old holiday decorations, and that became home. Aunt Jane taught me practical skills I'd never learned at the old house, balancing a checkbook with real numbers, negotiating with vendors over the phone for better prices on bulk flour, turning leftovers into profitable specials we'd test on her neighbors. We cooked together most nights, simple Michigan staples elevated with herbs from her backyard, and she listened when I talked about the festival win without changing the subject to Alex. She came to my graduation alone, cheering loudest when I walked as valedictorian in the crowded auditorium, holding a handmade sign that said "Future CEO." Dad texted about a work conflict that couldn't be moved. Mom didn't show or call. I opened my own bank account with the coffee shop wages direct deposit every Friday into a savings plan I'd researched online. Alex landed a soccer scholarship to a private middle school program with travel teams. I earned a full ride to the community college for business and culinary tracks covering tuition books, even a small meal stipend. Aunt Jane co-signed the forms at the kitchen table. No questions asked, just a proud smile when I showed her the acceptance letter. For the first time, my future felt like mine to build. 18 came with my first real paycheck from evening shifts at a small downtown craft beer pub, where I shadowed the head chef during slow hours to master farm-to-table sourcing from local Michigan growers. I learned to pair seasonal produce like autumn squash with amber ales, or summer berries with wheat beers, negotiating directly with farmers at weekend markets. For better rates on root vegetables, fresh herbs, and even small batch honey that elevated simple pub fare into something memorable for regulars who started asking for my specials by name. By 22, I'd combined those savings with my community college scholarship funds to lease a narrow storefront downtown and open Harbor Brew, number one, a cozy spot focused on house-crafted beers and wood-fired grilled dishes, using ingredients delivered fresh each morning from the same markets I'd built relationships with. I handled everything from painting the walls a warm cedar tone to match local furniture vibes, installing secondhand brewery equipment, designing the menu board with chalk markers for daily specials, testing fermentation batches in the back room until the flagship IPA balanced perfectly with smoked brisket sliders rubbed in house spices. The first customer who believed in me was the same furniture showroom owner from the festival gig. He booked a private catering event for his staff retreat and paid $150 upfront for custom beer-paired appetizers that incorporated his company's wood themes into the presentation, like oak-smoked cheeses on cedar planks that tied back to his product line. That money covered initial supply orders for the next month, and I celebrated by treating Aunt Jane to dinner at the pub, where it all started toasting with a non-alcoholic version of my new brew. To solve weekend wait times that turned away crowds during peak hours at festivals or game days, I taught myself basic coding at the public library after closing shifts, building a simple reservation app on a free platform with features like table booking via phones, automated reminders tied to local weather forecasts, and a waitlist queue that notified users when spots opened. I promoted it through Grand Rapids foodie groups on Facebook, targeting pages for beer enthusiasts, and lake trail cyclists, watching downloads climb from dozens to hundreds as word spread about the seamless experience at a neighborhood spot that felt personal. At 24, steady cash flow from app-driven loyalty allowed me to open the second location near the lake trails, a brighter space with outdoor seating on a patio overlooking the water, capitalized on summer tourists cycling the paths and stopping for post-ride pints. Aunt Jane took over bookkeeping from her home office, reconciling receipts each Sunday over coffee, while I trained new hires on consistent brew techniques, guest service standards like remembering regulars' favorite seats, and inventory rotation that kept reviews glowing on local apps. I graduated from community college with a degree in food business management, fully funded by scholarships I'd applied for during late-night study sessions, between shifts attending club events where guest speakers shared scaling stories from one location to chains. Joining the local entrepreneurship club connected me with Professor Cole Ford, a retired business professor who became my mentor, reviewing my expansion plans over monthly meetings at the original Harbor Brew, where he'd order the same rich stout every time, marking notes on napkins about cash flow projections. By 26, the chain had grown to 5 locations scattered across the city and suburbs each, with its own twist on the core menu, like lakeside seafood pairings or downtown vegan options, but unified by quality sourcing, the app's efficiency in handling reservations during busy seasons, and a culture of promoting from within. Revenue stabilized enough to hire loyal staff from the first pub who'd stuck with me through lean months of experimenting with recipes, now managing their own teams during the annual craft beer festivals that drew thousands downtown, coordinating booths that showcased our latest seasonal releases. 26 brought the chance to scale, pushing Harbor Brew from 5 solid locations to 10 across Michigan by leveraging the app's growing data on customer patterns. I integrated artificial intelligence upgrades that predicted peak times, not just from weather reports, but local events like minor league baseball games at Fifth Third Ballpark or riverside summer concerts along the Grand River, adjusting staff schedules dynamically and inventory orders in real time to minimize waste on slow nights while maximizing service during surges with prepped extra batches of popular taps. Professor Ford saw the potential during one of our check-ins at the flagship, and introduced me to Sophia Joe, a sharp venture investor based in Ann Arbor with a proven track record in food tech startups that blended hospitality with scalable software. She reviewed my numbers over several video calls from her office overlooking the university campus, asked pointed questions about user retention rates, supplier contract lock-ins, and churn during off-seasons, then offered $200,000 for 18% equity when I was 28. The funds went straight into refining the AI algorithms with a small development team hired from local tech meetups and securing leases for 3 new spots in college towns like East Lansing, where craft beer demand was exploding among students' faculty happy hours and alumni weekends. Growth accelerated from there, with each opening building on the last, through targeted social campaigns on platforms like Instagram Reels that highlighted unique pairings at every venue, from lakeside porters with grilled trout caught fresh from Muskegon suppliers to urban stouts matched with artisan chocolates sourced from small batch makers in Detroit's Eastern Market. By 30, the company landed on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list in the food and drink category, valuing the operation at $10 million based on revenue multiples, projected expansions into adjacent states like Wisconsin, and the app's proprietary data edge. Media profiles focused on the self-taught founder story, starting from coffee shop tips, bringing in partnership offers from regional breweries, eager to co-brand limited releases exclusive to Harbor Brew taps for quarterly rotations. I channeled part of the success into launching a foundation for at-risk youth, interested in food entrepreneurship, named after Aunt Jane, to honor her quiet guidance through my early struggles. The program provided scholarships for culinary certifications at the community college, where I'd studied one-on-one mentoring sessions with industry professionals, from supplier farms to distribution reps, and seed grants for 10 teenagers each year to start micro-ventures like pop-up stands at Grand Rapids farmers markets or online baked goods delivery through local courier partnerships. Selecting participants involved reviewing essays on overcoming obstacles similar to mine, then pairing them with Harbor Brew managers for hands-on training in everything from cost control spreadsheets to customer feedback loops that turned complaints into menu improvements. Mom and Dad sent occasional emails congratulating milestones: a new college town opening with record first-week sales, here a national magazine feature on sustainable sourcing there. But I kept responses polite and distant, copying Aunt Jane on threads for transparency, while focusing on operations instead of reconciliation attempts that never addressed the past. Alex posted updates on social media about taking over daily management at Dad's furniture company, photos of him in the warehouse, posing with custom conference tables, and captions about building family legacy, which I scrolled past without liking or commenting, to avoid feeding the narrative. The invitation arrived on a rainy afternoon in Grand Rapids, an elegant cream card with gold embossing in the mail for Mom and Dad's 30th wedding anniversary celebration, complete with venue details at a downtown hotel ballroom. I stared at the RSVP screen in my office above the original location, the one with the chalkboard menu I'd hand-lettered years ago using markers bought from a downtown art supply store, debating whether to confirm attendance at Mom and Dad's 30th wedding anniversary celebration booked at the Harbor Brew flagship under a generic management company name to keep costs down for the guest list of over 100, including extended relatives and business associates. After a session with my therapist discussing healthy boundaries, the power dynamic I'd built over a decade of independence, and specific strategies for handling potential triggers like selective storytelling, I decided to attend from a position of strength, clicking yes, for one, with no +1, and preparing mentally for whatever version of family they'd present by reviewing old photos only to reinforce my detachment. I arrived early that evening, slipping in through the staff entrance to avoid the main crowd filtering through the front doors decorated with simple string lights, intertwined with fresh garlands and floral arrangements themed around their original wedding colors of ivory and navy, pulled from faded album pages. Mom and Dad were already working the room, mingling with members of their craft beer club who'd become regulars at various locations without realizing the ownership tie, sampling seasonal taps, while chatting about upcoming tastings. Mom pulled Alex aside for introductions to potential clients and old friends. "This is our son Alex, the next generation running operations at the furniture company." She guided suppliers, local vendors specializing in reclaimed lumber, and even a few former co-workers from Dad's early warehouse days, toward him, emphasizing his role in recent custom projects that aligned with sustainable wood sourcing trends popular in West Michigan renovations and green building certifications. During dinner, the speeches began at the long communal tables set up in the brewing area, surrounded by stainless steel tanks that gleamed under soft amber lighting designed to highlight the copper accents and etched glassware customized for the night. Dad spoke first about 3 decades of partnership in life and business, thanking partners for contracts that kept the operation steady through economic shifts, supply chain disruptions from global events, and local market fluctuations that tested resilience. Then Mom took the microphone, her voice carrying over the clink of glasses and murmur of approval, as she praised Alex for managing key accounts with national retailers, expanding the showroom floor with interactive displays featuring virtual reality tours of client installations, and positioning the company as the real family successor in a market increasingly focused on eco-friendly materials and community impact initiatives. She wrapped up by toasting our true family bond that has carried us forward for 30 years through every challenge, without a single mention of me or the Empire, literally hosting the milestone event, even though Harbor Brew had become a go-to name in Grand Rapids social circles for anniversary parties, corporate gatherings, and even small weddings with its versatile private rooms. I stayed calm throughout, sipping a non-alcoholic ginger brew, pulled fresh from the tap, labeled with a custom anniversary sticker my team had added without fanfare, to match the theme, recognizing how Mom leveraged the venue's reputation. Our club's loyal following of enthusiasts who organized monthly events, and the seamless service from trained staff to boost Dad's retiring legacy without crediting the source that made it all possible or acknowledging the founder in the room. Her final words toasted the real family, eyes locking on me across the room as the applause began to swell. Her words hung in the air, and Mom added loudly for emphasis, pointing in my direction so no one missed it. "You're not family." Dad stood silent beside her, hands clasped in front, avoiding my gaze entirely, as if the floor held sudden interest. I set my glass down carefully on the nearest table, walked straight to the small stage where the microphone waited for the next toast, and took it without asking permission or waiting for the MC to introduce. The room hushed almost immediately, forks pausing midair as familiar faces from the craft beer scene, Dad's longtime suppliers, and even a few distant cousins turned toward me. "Thank you all for celebrating this milestone at Harbor Brew." I began, voice steady from years of pitching to investors and training staff. My 10 locations across Michigan, from downtown Grand Rapids to the college towns. My company valued at $10 million based on last quarter's independent audit. Diego Soto, my operations director, who'd started as a part-time bartender at the first pub pulling shifts while finishing his hospitality degree, stepped forward from the sidebar where he'd been overseeing the evening's service flow. He adjusted his tie, pulled a wireless mic from the sound tech, and confirmed without hesitation, "That's absolutely correct. Mira Reed is the founder, CEO, and majority owner of the entire chain." He held up a tablet displaying the official company profile from the State Business Registry, zooming in on the ownership section for anyone in the front rows doubting the claim. Gasps rippled through the tables like a wave, phones emerging from pockets and purses to fact-check in real time on review sites and local news archives that had covered the Forbes recognition. I continued without pause, sharing the journey in a condensed form tailored for the first time to this unwilling audience. From the double coffee shop shifts that funded community college classes in business management and culinary arts, balancing textbooks with espresso pulls until closing to the late nights, coding the initial reservation app in public library cubicles with spotty Wi-Fi and vending machine dinners, from securing the narrow downtown lease with scholarship leftovers and a small personal loan co-signed by Aunt Jane, who became my emotional anchor through every rejection letter and supplier delay, to negotiating term sheets with Sophia that included not just capital, but operational milestones tied to new openings. None of it would have happened without Aunt Jane Sullivan, my mother's sister, who opened her home when I had nowhere else, taught me to balance books over kitchen table lessons, and stood as the only family member at my graduation, cheering louder than anyone. I still call her every Sunday, send care packages of our latest brews, and spend every holiday at her lake house, where gratitude isn't spoken, it's lived in shared meals and quiet understanding. I described launching the Aunt Jane Foundation not out of lingering bitterness, but to pay forward the exact support one person provided when blood ties consistently failed, selecting teens through detailed applications, guiding them in drafting business plans for ventures like mobile coffee carts or artisan pickle subscriptions, and hosting soft openings where they practiced pitch and pivot in front of real customers. I learned forgiveness isn't forced reconciliation or pretending the hurt never happened, I said, pausing to let it land. It's releasing the emotional hold they maintain so you can invest fully in people who choose you back every single day, without conditions like Aunt Jane has from the day I showed up with a duffel bag to every milestone since. I announced that the evening's bar precedes every pint, appetizer, and dessert would seed another full scholarship round for the Foundation's next cohort, then stepped down to applause that started polite, but built into something genuine, drowning any attempt at interruption from the head table. The fallout unfolded swiftly in the weeks that followed, each consequence a direct ripple from the public truth. Mom lost her central standing in the craft beer club almost overnight. Members who'd unknowingly boosted her social circle through shared event planning and recommendation threads distanced themselves when the ownership reveal spread through private group chats and public comments on the club's page, canceling 2 planned tastings she'd volunteered to host at alternative venues, and quietly removing her from the organizing committee. Dad's furniture company faced immediate backlash from 3 pending contracts with eco-conscious developers who'd attended the party. Partners expressed discomfort in post-event emails about aligning with a brand that publicly erased a successful daughter's contributions, forcing him to downsize warehouse space he'd earmarked for expansion and lay off 2 long-term employees to cover the revenue gap. Alex sent a series of messages starting with shock, moving to apologies for not knowing the full story or how things looked from your side, and escalating to pleas for a coffee meetup to clear the air and maybe collaborate on a joint event. I read the 3rd attempt felt the familiar pull of guilt trip language and blocked the number, permanently prioritizing the peace I'd fought to maintain over explanations that would only reopen old patterns. 6 months later, I hosted a private celebration at the flagship exclusively for my core team and the current Foundation scholars, a low-key gathering in the back brewing area transformed with string lights and long tables covered in butcher paper for doodling ideas. We debuted custom brews named after personal milestones like Boundary Stout, with notes of dark chocolate and restraint, or Chosen IPA, hopped for bright citrus clarity, and paired them with small plates the teens had developed in their programs. The young entrepreneurs presented progress updates around the room. One showed revenue graphs from her food truck, specializing in fusion tacos using local ingredients. Another demoed the subscription snack box app she'd built with mentorship from our tech lead, complete with customer testimonials scrolling on a projector. We shared stories late into the night, laughing over failed batches and surprise wins, the conversation always circling back to the core lesson woven through every session: family is built on mutual respect, consistent presence during the mundane middles, as much as the big moments, and the courage to enforce standards without apology. Walking away from toxicity isn't weakness or abandonment, it's the strongest foundation for authentic growth, creating space for relationships that fuel rather than drain. From that day forward, I chose my family deliberately, the ones who show up for inventory counts and investor calls alike, celebrate wins without caveat or comparison, and grow alongside me through every iteration of the business and the foundation. Aunt Jane remains at the heart of it, my constant, my gratitude in human form, the one I honor not just with a namesake program, but with every choice that keeps our bond close and unbreakable. To everyone who listened through every twist, every setback turned strategy, and every boundary set, thank you for staying until the very end. The real victory isn't the empire or the valuation, it's knowing your worth, independent of those who couldn't see it and building anyway. What resonated most with you? The unapologetic boundaries, the comeback from erasure, or the power of chosen family? Share in the comments below. Your stories, your insights inspire the next generation. We're mentoring through the foundation and beyond.